Everybody, let's go take a look at chapter 7, 8, and 9. I'm going to talk about designing interventions in chapter 7. Here are the learning objectives. Again, you can stop the recording anytime you want and take a look at pages that I point out. There's not enough time for me to point out everything and talk about it in detail. So an intervention is a set of sequenced and planned actions. These are the things that you do. It's the fix in some way. Sometimes the client will call it, got to come in and fix something. Even going into an organization, having a meeting for the first time with a client is actually an intervention. And you can see the bottom line there. Interventions purposely disrupt the status quo. That's our business. I mean, in organization development means change. And our business is to do whatever it takes for a change in an organization in a direction that they want to go. So let's talk about BlackBerry for a second. Take a second and read this. So we all remember BlackBerry, of course, and they're almost gone now. They're in very dire straits. But BlackBerry was one of the first handheld devices, very successful, and then along came iPhone and Android. And so BlackBerry's in big shape or big trouble right now. But let's just use them as an example as we talk about interventions. Let's assume that BlackBerry has called us in to help them. Oops, we go right there. So if we go into BlackBerry, there's different types of things we could do once we understand the problem. And these interventions come in 4 categories that you see there. Human process, technostructural, human resources management, or HRM, and strategic change. So let's go through each one of them. Here's human process interventions. Take a look at that. Some of these things probably look familiar. Process consultation is helping an organization, specifically smaller groups of people, even 1 or 2 people, or 2 or 3 or more people, recognize how they're interacting, kind of like group dynamics, observations. Conflict resolution, team building, organizational confrontation meeting, where we come in and we bring the issues up that are the elephant in the room and so on. Intergroup relations, large group interventions. There's more about this in the book, but there's one, the human process interventions. Then we move to technostructural. So this is where we're actually going to change the structure of the organization. We might redesign it. Certain departments might go away, or you might add departments. You might downsize, re-engineer, change things. You might do the total quality management thing. You might bring in Six Sigma. But you're going to do things that actually change the reporting relationships and the structure and the processes within the organization. Then you can do an HRM, human resource management type of intervention. You can see what those are. Take a look at those. And you can see coaching, mentoring, management, leadership development, employee stress. All of these are different types of programs, or if you want to think of them as interventions, that we in the OD business provide. Okay, so that's another category. And the last category is strategic change. And this is when you're working with an organization. This is probably more like the BlackBerry. How in the world do they change their organization and how they do what they do in order to get back into the marketplace and compete with Android and iPhone? And could they ever do that? Over here we see mergers and acquisitions. Actually, the original RIM, or Research in Motion, was picked up. They are the people who developed the BlackBerry. They were actually picked up and merged into a larger organization. So these strategic change interventions are usually on the big side. U.S. Airways picking up American Airlines and keeping their name is a good example of a strategic change organization. So you can learn more about these in the books. But let's talk about interventions themselves. In order to be effective, look at the bullet points here. Is it relevant? Do you have the information you need? Free and informed choice means that the people who are involved of their free will. They're not forced into it, and that they're committed on the inside of the organization to make change. Is it based on causal knowledge of intended outcomes? And so what that means is, do you know what it is that you're trying to do? Do you know where it is that you're trying to take the organization with the intervention and what's going to happen? And does it transfer competence to manage change to organization members? If you come in and do something and you're the only one who can do it, and then you leave and they can't do it themselves, and you've not done much of a service. You've probably heard of that line, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. Deciding effective interventions, contingencies related to the change situation, and you can read those. So there's a number of things that have to be in place for an intervention, whatever it is that you do. If BlackBerry needs to change the direction, if BlackBerry needs to reorganize, all of these things that you see here have something to do. They're contingent and they relate to the change situation. Individual differences. If half of BlackBerry says, well, we shouldn't change, and the other half says, yes, we should, well, that's not going to work very well. Management style, technical uncertainty. Well, we don't have the technical know-how to keep up with iPhone. Dimensions of the change process, how much the top management is in support of a change or not. And then here down here, the expertise of the change practitioner, that would be the OD agent, that would be you. And whatever the cultural values and the economic contingencies are, if they don't have the money to do it, if it's too much of a shift in the culture of the organization. A lot of mergers and acquisitions fail because of this right here, cultural values. And here's what we mean by cultural values, the context orientation, kind of the way that the organization is set up. We'll go through each one of these: power, distance, uncertainty, avoidance, achievement, orientation, individualism. Here they are: context orientation. You can read that. Again, you can return to these or stop anytime you want. Power, distance. How it reminds you of the military. Members of a society accept the status and power are distributed unequally in the organization. The general has more power than the lieutenant, who has more power than the sergeant, who has more power than the new recruit. So power, distance, uncertainty, avoidance. How well you tolerate what's unfamiliar and unpredictable. I would imagine uncertainty is the name of the game at, say, Google and Apple. Achievement orientation. And finally, individualism. Economic development, some of the things that contribute to the effectiveness of an intervention. So these are different types of economies, if you will, subsistence, there's the word, economies, the types of industries that provide agriculturally based products. And there's industrializing economies, there's industrial economies. Here's a graph you can take a look at, the cultural fit with OD depending on the level of economic development in different parts of the world. So we've got a high level of OD practice and a high level of economic development. So you see the UK, Scandinavia, United States. But if you were to go over and try to do OD work in the South Pacific or in the Middle East, not as easy because of low development here. Even though the level of economic development is high, there's a low cultural fit. And if you go right here, Central America, Eastern Europe, Asia, this is the areas where you'll see the least likely fit between an OD practitioner and the cultures over there. Contingencies related to the target of change. Okay, so you're going to go into BlackBerry and say, let's do some change and let's get back and get competitive with Apple and so on. And these are the kinds of issues that you want to look at. You'd say, well, what's your strategy? What are you doing now, BlackBerry, that isn't serving you well? Tell us about your technology and how you're structured, how your organization is laid out, your org chart, if you will. What kind of human resources issues do you have? Can you get the people that you need? Can you pay them well? Can you motivate them and so on? And then how well do the people that you do have get along with each other and relate to each other as they work together? In terms of organizational levels, we could certainly look at individual levels. How are individual employees feeling about being there? We could look at group levels, how well a department functions. We could look at the entire organization, and we could look at the organization as it operates within and among and across all different departments. What are some of the strategic issues? You can look at these. Remember, you're the OD person and you're curious, why is BlackBerry failing? What are the functions, products, services, markets of the organization? What in the world are you doing that iPhone, or what are you not doing that iPhone is doing, or that Apple is doing? How could you get back to gain a competitive advantage? How can you compete with iPhones? Can a BlackBerry ever compete with an iPhone again? How to relate to the environment you're in, the economic environment, and what values will guide this organization as it tries to change. Here are some technology and structural issues that you as an OD person might be curious about. How are they dividing labor at BlackBerry? How are they coordinating departments between each other? How are they producing their products and services? And how are they designing work? And you might come and say, well, maybe BlackBerry has some human resource issues. Are they attracting competent people? Are they setting goals and rewarding people that work at BlackBerry? And how are they developing and planning these people's careers, especially in a failing organization? And then human process issues, how well do they communicate? How do they solve problems? How do they make decisions? How do they interact? And of course, how do they lead? So that's chapter 7. I'm going to stop it here and make another individual file for chapter 8 and 9 because it'd be a little bit too big to put these all together. So that's chapter 7. If you want, you can, of course, go back and listen to it again and start it and stop it. And once again, a reminder that this little piece I'm going over does not replace what's in the book. It's just a kind of a high-level overview for you. All right, folks. Well, thanks, and I'll see you in the next chapter.